What's up? Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports, also known as the BLS Podcast. Um, I see there's one person watching so far. If that's Martin, what's up, Martin? Let me know in the comments if you can see me and hear me well. If it's not, hey, welcome. Um, I'm not even necessarily expecting a lot of people to show up for this episode because it's at a time that I don't normally go live. And it's on a day when I'm not sure how many people really want to hear me talk about the Cowboys. Hey Martin, good to see you. I can always count on Martin to show up and give me an audience of at least one. Eastside, I don't have time for your shit today. I'm not here to make excuses for nobody. So if you can't wait to hear the excuses, you should keep scrolling and find another content creator. And one day I'm gonna figure out how to use admins to like shut you up because today is not the day. Um, but yeah, so why am I here? That's a good question. I'm not gonna lie, if you're familiar with my podcast, and I'm just giving myself a little intro because I've realized that YouTube has started recommending me on various videos, and there are people who might find my content who don't know who I am. But yes, I am a Cowboys fan. My podcast was started years ago, basically for me to talk about the teams and people that I'm a fan of, and that's it. So it's like if you're wondering like why I cover this team and not that team, or this player, not that player, is because it all started with like who I'm a fan of. And shortly after I started the podcast, I actually was a Saints fan. I still am a Saints fan, but I just don't be out there like I'm a Saints fan, because I don't talk about them as much as I used to. Living in Texas and not having access to something like NFL Sunday Ticket, it's just been harder to keep up with them accurately. But I did become a Cowboys fan. I was a fan of CeeDee Lamb when he was in college. And when I watched Hard Knocks the summer of, was that 2021? Summer of 2021, I became a Cowboys fan all over again. I've been becoming more and more of a fan ever since. And so if you know me and you know how I usually talk about this team, and you know anything about this team, you know last night was rough, to say the least. Now, if you watched me yesterday I did my recap of the Colorado game and of the USC game, and then I did my preview of the Dallas game. And I said, if we lose, it shouldn't be by much. So I was mentally prepared for the possibility that the Dallas Cowboys might lose to the San Francisco 49ers. I was mentally prepared for that. Um, but what I was not prepared for was the way in which they lost. And the first word that comes to mind is disappointing, but disappointing definitely doesn't do it justice. And the reason why I say that is because I, as a fan, I'm a person who has been, I haven't been following this team very long, but I did start writing about the team. I write for Inside the Star. And so through writing about them and doing what it takes to write about them several times a week, in terms of understanding the history of certain players, understanding the history of the team, paying attention to who's on the coaching staff, what is the philosophy of the team, what is the culture of the team, what are the personal philosophies of certain players. When you start investing in the story in that way, there are certain things that you just come to expect. There are certain things that you come to believe in. And when you start believing in certain things and expecting certain things because of what you've seen these players say, because of what you've seen them do, and then they show up or don't show up the way they did yesterday, it is disappointing to the point of being hurtful. And it's hard for me to be like, yeah, that hurt me as a fan because like they don't know me. They don't give a fuck about me. I mean, they might know me. I've done shows, I've done interviews with Chef Hoppy, right? If you watch this show, so they might know of me, right? Tad has retweeted a couple of my posts. I've done an interview with Chef Hoppy. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I've connected with that they might know of. So they may have heard of Bitches Love Sports, whatever, but they don't owe me anything technically, right? So it's weird to be like, yeah, what this team did yesterday, that shit was hurtful. But as somebody who like watches you weekly and listens to your interviews and tries to defend people to you like publicly, or defend you to people publicly, I should say, and then that's what you show up with. And then I have friends who, like, I had the option to avoid this whole shit today. I could go this whole week and not talk about the Cowboys, and there's nothing anybody could do to make me. I could shut down my Twitter if I wanted to. I could not do YouTube. I could not put anything on Spotify. I could take those jerseys in my closet and I could put them in a box and put them in storage, and nobody could stop me if I wanted to, right? But I have friends who, it's their actual job, it's their actual source of income to talk about this team, and they had to go live last night. I have friends who have to record shows today. I have friends who have to write about this team today. And I can only imagine, and in some cases, I don't have to imagine. A few of those people I've heard from, and I know how they feel about what they have to do and how they feel about the fact that not only it was a loss, but the way the team lost, but now they have to take the brunt of the 49ers fans who don't know how to be cordial. They have to now explain themselves because they defended Dak Prescott or they defended Mike McCarthy or because they said the defense would still be all right without Trayvon Diggs. And they have to do it on a schedule. I had a shot of tequila last night, went to sleep, overslept. There was nobody to be like, hey, you weren't on YouTube at 7 a.m. Whatever. But those folks have are on a schedule. Like they have to do this whether they want to or not, and they have to respond to super chats whether they want to or not, and they have to respond to comments on their articles whether they want to or not, and they have to do this for a certain amount of time, and they have to talk about it a certain way whether they want to or not. So when I talk about people being hurt by the team, I'm not just talking about me and my feelings and what I wish would have happened. I'm just like, nah, there are people who are literally having to deal with some actual emotional and psychological consequences of this shit. And those people have been on my mind today. But we're not going to spend too much more time talking about them because I do want to make some points about the game, and then get into just the overall point that I want to talk about. But first, I'm gonna scroll through. I see there's several comments being left. Maybe I can't scroll through. So, fun fact: my laptop has been doing this thing lately where it just decides I don't have a mouse anymore. So, I'm gonna see if I can do my little screen thing that works sometimes and get the mouse to come back up, and then I can scroll through your comments. If it doesn't work, then I won't be able to. Yeah, my laptop is fucked, y'all. Uh, so yesterday it was like Wi-Fi and videos, and today it's like I'm gonna leave it off for a second. I'm gonna try to scroll here. I wish I had like a stylus so that I didn't have to do this. Sorry, guys. Um, Martin said I've seen teams get blown out. Uh, let's see what else. Jojo said my MacBook has been doing that. I'm glad to know it's not just me because like I have no idea what is going on. Martin said, I've seen teams. Oh, wait, no, that's the same comment. Okay. Sorry. Doing this on a phone screen is weird. So I'm going to just keep going. I might end up having to completely restart my laptop, and hopefully that doesn't ruin the stream. Oh, awesome. My mouse is back. Here we go. Because I was like, I also can't show these videos if I don't have a mouse. But yeah, I do want to talk about the game. And I know you lost connection to my mic. I don't care. I'm using this mic. Let me know if y'all can't hear me or if at any point y'all can't see me because it looks like my laptop is still trying to ruin my streams, but I did yesterday. I'm gonna figure out how to make this work. And yeah, this whole thing is fucked. Somebody get me a new laptop. Anyway, I've literally got stuff just popping up on the screen like by itself, and I'm not sure why. Give me 1 second, y'all. I have to do something about this. Talk amongst yourselves, and I'm gonna be right back. What the hell are you doing? Stop. So what it is like my laptop is like it has a mouse, but it also has touchscreen features. And it what it looks like is like the touchscreen features are like trying to take over without me telling it to. So what I'm gonna try to do real quick is go to the settings and see if I can turn that off. And then hopefully that'll make it so that I don't have to keep interrupting our discussion. Because what I want to do next is talk about some of the sound that we heard from the press conferences. And that way we can talk about just it kind of maybe what some of the things that the team was thinking about. Um, okay, that's not coming up. I'm gonna just have to keep turning my shit on and off and hope for the best. Anyway, one thing that I'm gonna start with is Mike McCarthy's press conference, and just a few of the things that he said. And I do believe that he's gonna have another one today. He normally has another one on Mondays, but we're gonna talk with what he said late last night. I think the press conference ended up being somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m. by the time they talked to him. Um, Rackham said at this point, free agent receivers come to Dallas to die. Amari knew he. Oh, don't say that, y'all. Okay, here's something that I'm gonna say before we get into the sound. Okay, so yes, there was a lot of weight to this game. There was this. I'm not gonna sit here and be like it's just week 5, because there was more to this game than like just another week. So, for example, I'm gonna give you an analogy to why this game carries weight. And then I'm gonna tell you also why we should kind of stay away from the rhetoric like free agent receivers come here to die. So it was a measuring stick game. For example, I'm a personal trainer, right? So when people come to me, I'm not one of those trainers that has like cookie cutter workout plans. Like you can go to my website and just download a workout plan and you just do it. I'm the kind of personal trainer that if you say you are trying to achieve a goal, I'm going to try to get it as specific as possible. You'd be surprised how many people do not have actual goals. I'll be like, oh, so what are you trying to do? Oh, I just want to tone up a little bit. Yo, you are not about to pay me my going rate to tone up a little bit. Like anybody can tone up a little bit. Like if you're having trouble, there's a reason for that. That means there's a certain amount of weight you can't lose. There's a certain amount of muscle that you can't seem to gain. Because one thing that I know for sure from dealing with a lot of clients is that if you truly can reach a goal by yourself without paying me to help you, you're gonna do it. So that means for some reason you're having trouble doing that, right? So I try to get them to a 90-day goal. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to put them on a program and check back in 90 days. There's going to be benchmarks. And so if we hit the end of phase 1 and I'm expecting them to have certain results at the end of phase 1 and they don't have them, then that's when I'm going to be like, okay, we got to do something different because you're not going to reach your goal in time if this is the pace at which we're going. And so I'll look at things like maybe they're not eating right, maybe they're not working out the way that they're supposed to, which can entail a lot of things. But either way, even though the goal that we're looking for happens in 90 days, at the end of phase 1, at the end of, phase 1 can end anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks after we start. That's when I'm going to be like, okay, let's reevaluate whether or not this plan is still the plan for you. And so for the Cowboys, I would say week 5 was the end of phase 1. There were things that people, as fans, and hopefully as a team, that people were looking for in order to know, was this team on the right track? And the message that they got was not only are they not on the right track, but they're going to have to change a lot of things in order to get on the right track. There are people who are questioning whether they can get on the right track at all. There are people who are questioning whether McCarthy can lead them there. There are people who weren't before who are now questioning whether or not Dak is the guy, right? And so for anybody who's maybe not as intense of a fan, if you're wondering why people are taking it so hard, even though it's quote unquote just one game, that's why. It's because of what that one game and how it was played told us about this team, not only from a physical standpoint, but also from a coaching standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. When we consider some of the things that we saw happening on the sidelines, when we look at the demeanor of some of these guys in the post-game press conferences, there's questions to be asked all across the board. Like in that locker room, everything needs to happen from saging the locker room to bringing in a mindset coach to bringing in a lifestyle coach to maybe having somebody else call plays, because this is the second time that they've had an embarrassing loss. And Mike McCarthy has stood on that podium and said, well, this was on me. And I'm like, okay, we need a better answer than that, my dude. So, yes, it's a lot. But at the same time, there still are 12 more games left to play. So, the same way I would tell my clients, like, yo, we are not where we need to be in order to reach this goal you said you wanted to reach in 90 days. It's the same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, yo, we are not where we need to be as a team to reach this goal you said you were going to reach this year. However, if you make the right changes right now, you can get back on track. Because as pissed off as people are today, I really do believe if this team somehow figures out a way, and yes, it is possible before y'all get in the chat and say it's not, yes, it is possible for them to somehow get on a track that leads them to an NFC championship or at least an NFC championship game. It's not impossible. It hasn't been taken away. If that were to happen, a lot of the people who are pissed off today, they would forget. Well, I won't say they'll forget about this, but they would let it go. A lot of people who were saying things last night and today about certain coaches and certain quarterbacks on our team, they would change their tune if they were to make that happen, right? But it's up to the team to make that happen. That's the thing. The same way I can't do the work for my clients and I can root for them and I can support them and I can give them all the information in the world, but at the end of the day, they're the ones who have to do the work. It's the same way with this team. Ain't none of us on the field with them. We can do all the talking in the world and, all the film study and all the breakdowns and all the evaluations of what we think went wrong that led to penalties and missed tackles and, bad plays and missed passes. We can do that all day. But at the end of the day, it's up to the team. So that being said, I'm here for the fans. Like I said, when I first started this podcast, it was all about the fans and just what it meant to be a fan. I developed a concept called ethical fangirling. That was all about how to be a fangirl, but fangirls sometimes get a bad rap, right? So ethical fangirling was all about how to be a fangirl, but do it in a way that doesn't make you look crazy. So I've always been all about the fans. As much as I've learned about the game and as much as I enjoy, watching film now and doing all that stuff, it's still about the fans. So that's what I'm here for today. So let's start by listening to a few clips from Mike McCarthy, and we'll talk a little bit about what he has to say and how I feel about it. I'll just put it that way for right. Oh, might help if I turn the sound on.
Do you explain what happened out there today and what was the message to you?
Well, explanation, a very humbling loss, clearly stating the obvious. I think the biggest thing is I just had a quick reflection on the 5 games that we played in. It's been a wide range of performance, as wide as a range that I could ever recall in a 5-week period. So thank you. The biggest thing is for, us to be accountable. It was clearly humbling, but it is one game. I think I expressed this during the week. I thought they were playing very well coming into this. I knew our defense was in for a big challenge. I've been very impressed with what they were doing on offense. And, and frankly, it should start with me. I didn't do a good job tonight. So I wish we'd have gotten balance, earlier in the game. That did not happen. You don't convert third downs. So, but, you come out at halftime, put the drive together, and then, and then obviously, a lot of things went wrong after that. So, but it's clearly just shows where we are as a team. We're 3-2. Our consistency, even when we played really well and did some things, when you look at the 3 games that were won by, a big margin, and then the Arizona game where, the pre-snap penalties and, that showed up again tonight. So just clearly on it, and just, we got work to do. We got a lot of work to do, and we got a game in 8 days. So we'll spend Wednesday. We'll spend a lot of time on this one, and then we'll move on to the Chargers.
All right, so
All right. So before I go into the next question, I'm going to talk a little bit about what he said and what I like and what I didn't like. I like the fact that he acknowledged that it was humbling, but I personally would have preferred had he used a stronger word like embarrassing, because that's what it is. Like, I feel like the Cardinals game was a humbling loss because the way this team is put together, even with the people that we were missing from the Cardinals game, I think a lot of people would have still expected us to beat that team. And the reason why we did not beat the Cardinals, or I should say the Cowboys did not beat the Cardinals, wasn't just because there were certain people missing. It was how the team responded. And by the team, I mean everyone from coaches to coordinators to players. It was how they responded to those people being missing. Coach McCarthy said himself that he was overly conservative, or he overreacted to the missing O linemen. MicahParsons talked about how the vibe wasn't right, with Trayvon Diggs being injured and so on and so forth. And so I was in a space where I brought those things up as reasons why week 3 was kind of an anomaly for the Cowboys. And someone said to me, something along the lines of, well, all you're telling me is that your team, because this person, I think they were a 49ers fan actually, and they were like, all you're telling me is that your team can't handle adversity. And I wasn't going to defend that. I'm just like, yeah, by their own admission, they did not handle adversity well in week 3, but I hoped that they would get better at handling it. And I don't know what the adversity was this week, but it seems like they didn't get any better at handling it. That's the thing. Um, and so when he says, "Oh, well, it shows where we are. We're 3-2," and I'm just like, "But you shouldn't be 3-2. You should be 4-1 at worst, based on what you told us this team was supposed to be." And based on what you told us this offense was supposed to be, we shouldn't have had a lot of problems offensively that we had yesterday. So what the hell is going on? And I know he doesn't have to answer those questions, but if there's ever an issue with people being dissatisfied with the answers to his questions, I think we can point to stuff like this and be like, yo, you spent all off season, all summer telling us about play call purpose and the Texas Coast offense. And we heard the players say, okay, we're going to be on the same page. Things are going to run a lot more smoothly. It's going to be this explosive offense, so on and so forth. Okay, what happened to that? This is why I can't be in rooms like this one, because if I was, I would have to ask those questions, and I would have to ask them directly, and I would want an answer, and I would never be invited back. So the next question, I don't know if y'all can hear the reporters, but Clarence asked a question about how demoralizing this loss was.
That's okay. We talked during the week about what a win could mean. I could boost your confidence wise and get shot in the arm based on some things y'all did all season. A loss like this, how demoralizing can it be?
Well, I think it's a punch in the gut, it's a kick in the ass, whatever phrase you want to put on it. But I think it's clearly. But you look at how the season's gone. We've been knocked down. I mean, clearly they beat us in all 3 phases. So, I think we will clearly acknowledge it. And I'm not a burn the tape guy. And I think that's a crock. We're not going to do that. We're going to go through it, make sure we're clear on exactly, what the expectation are. Make sure we're giving our players what they need to be successful. So, they played extremely well, and we did not. And it was really in the areas of basics, really in the areas that I thought we had taken a step as a team. So, I didn't see this coming. I thought their prep was good this week. So I thought we had one of our better Fridays and Saturdays of the year. So, but I think we've talked about before, sometimes you have a great week of preparation and it doesn't go so well. And some weeks it's not the best week of preparation, you play well. So we did not hit the mark at all today.
So he talked in that last statement about how they didn't see this coming and how the preparation was good, but somehow they didn't get the job done. Like I said yesterday in my live, I said, if we lose, I don't expect the Cowboys to lose by a lot. But then they did lose by a lot, a hell of a lot, in an embarrassing fashion. And a lot of it had to do with just self-inflicted problems, the pre-snap penalties, the turnovers, just even the O-line, and y'all let me know in the comments, those of you who watch the game and who watch games regularly. I know there was a big fuss made about the idea that, the Cowboys were going to have their starting offensive line for the first time in years, right? But even the offensive line, they didn't look very good, and I don't know if that's because they haven't spent enough time together. So despite how talented each of them are individually, maybe it just did not translate to what they needed to do on the field. But things never felt settled. Dak never looked comfortable the way that I would expect him to look behind an O-line that's supposed to be so great. That's supposed to be, the best O-line we've seen all season. And I saw people on Twitter naming a few reasons for that. Ryan Clark put out a tweet about how it didn't make sense to have Steele going up against Bosa one-on-one over and over again. And he might have a point there. He seemed to base that entirely off Steele just coming off of ACL surgery. And there are a lot of people who disagree on the impact of that on offensive linemen. Hey, I personally, as a trainer, I think it still impacts you. Yes, it impacts you in different ways for an O lineman than it would for a wide receiver, but I'm not going to sit here and act like it doesn't impact you. So yeah, if y'all have any comments on that, I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat about how the offensive line looked and how comfortable Dak did or did not look. But when you say the preparation was good, but you did see this coming, I'm just like, okay, well then that tells me that your preparation is actually not that great. Because here, let me use the personal trainer example again. So sometimes I'll have a client who is making progress, but they're not doing the right things to make progress. And if I don't get a handle on it quickly, it's gonna backfire. So, for example, I have clients sometimes who want to lose weight and they want to lose it really quickly. And one of the things that they think they should do is do a lot of cardio. Well, as a personal trainer with the certifications that I have, I know that because of how the human body adapts to cardio, although it might get you good results in the short term, over time, it's not going to get you the same amount of results. And you're either going to have to do way more cardio or your body will like literally stop burning fat in this way. Or worse yet, you can even start gaining weight, right? So if I look at my clients tracking and I see, okay, they're not eating the way that we decided that they would eat in order to reach this goal. They're not taking into account certain nutrition principles. And they're not working out regularly. They're not doing the program I designed for them, yet somehow they are losing weight. I'm going to reach out to them and be like, okay, so what are you doing? And sorry, I had to restart my laptop again and started doing the thing. I think if I don't keep my finger on the mouse, it's going to do that. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I'm going to be like, what are you doing? And if they're like, oh, well, I started adding 30 minutes of uphill cardio twice a week, I'm going to be like, stop that. Stop that. Do not do that. Right. And so I guess that's what I'm wondering with this team right now is like, okay, when you say your prep was good, but yet somehow you showed up yesterday the way that you showed up, what exactly are you doing? And give me 1 second because I want to go back to Mike McCarthy, but I can't do it without my mouse, which is not showing up. All right. Well, anyway, we'll just keep talking about some of the other points Mike McCarthy said while I give this a minute. The next question was about Dak's interceptions, and he said something along the lines of, he doesn't see a lot of high performance grades coming out of this game. And honestly, if I were a coach, this is one of those games where I would just probably throw out the idea of performance grades altogether, and just give everybody an F. Don't burn the tape. Watch the tape by all means, but like, ain't no point in like giving individual grades for something like this. Um, and let's see, where's the next part where Mike McCarthy actually makes a good point? I'm gonna go to a little bit after the 4 minute mark where he starts talking about Brock Purdy and some of the things that the 49ers did well. And we'll just go from there. And I will do my best to keep my finger on the mouse. Thanks for being with me, you guys. I love y'all.
Your defense has given up 10 points a game, best in the NFL. What do you think that San Francisco did offensively tonight that kind of gave you guys fits?
I mean, I thought they, played at a high level. It starts with the run and the things that come off of that. I think they do, an excellent job with the motions and the double, shifts and motions. Frankly, I thought Brock played extremely well. I thought he made some big time throws tonight.
This next question is important because he talks about not getting into a rhythm.
In the Arizona game, where it's tough to get a rhythm, those kind of start and stop. Did you feel this team ever hit a rhythm tonight? Ever got to what you wanted to do?
I don't look at this game anything like the Arizona game. I mean, Arizona game, we went up and down the field. We just didn't put it in the end zone. We not converting on the third downs. We had manageable third downs in the first half. We didn't convert. That was probably our biggest, negative in the first half. And I didn't like the balance of running pass. That's not the way we need to play.
Defensively,
So that last answer really irked the shit out of me, I'll be honest, because he said he didn't like the balance of run and pass, but he also took accountability for the play calling. So I'm just like, if you didn't like the balance of run and pass, why didn't you change it? Like, what the hell? And that's one of those things I would have had to ask a follow-up question on. Like the next person to ask a question was Clarence, and I didn't write down what he said, but it led to an answer about pre-snap penalties, which that was an issue on the part of the defense. But I'm just like, when I hear the person just took accountability for the play calling, say like, yeah, I didn't like the balance of run and pass. I'm just like, is there another one of you or something? Like, whose responsibility was that? Was that not your responsibility? Do we have an incorrect understanding of the situation? Let me go to y'all's comments real quick. Martin said, I didn't like that they didn't help their tackle with the tight end or help or our running back chipping. Here's what I say about I'm assuming you're talking about the Cowboys not helping the Cowboys tackles by adding a tight end. So at least a couple of times, I didn't see how often this happened, but the 49ers were doing this thing where one of the linebackers would come down to join the rush. And so basically, whichever side the tight ends were on, that's the side that the linebacker came from. So like there were several times where it was actually Fred Warner who came and ended up attacking that side, because I'm thinking of one play in particular, at least, where there were two tight ends on one side, and then Warner came down from the other side. And so I would have to watch the film to see how often that happened and the ways that they executed that. And once again, this is not to make an excuse for the Cowboys, because, I'm like, if I can see that in the moment, I would expect them to see it and be able to make some sort of adjustment, do something to figure it out. But it was things like that that were causing Dak to be uncomfortable in the pocket, and he was just like off of his timing. He didn't look comfortable. Um, and I do think one of those situations was what led to his first interception. And I'm going to play that clip in a second, because before I get to Dak's sound, I'm going to play a video of an interaction that happened with him and Mike McCarthy that a couple of people asked me about and wanted my opinions on. Um, Rackham said the O-line needed a home game to mesh. Coming together in a hostile environment is hard. I can imagine how it would be, because I couldn't hear the counts, so I don't know if they just weren't loud enough or if they went to a silent count. But during the home games, we can hear the counts, so we know how loud they are. Um, but yeah, if they were coming together for the first time and it was like a silent count and they're dealing with all this trickery coming from the 49ers defense, I could see that being very unsettling. I'll put it that way. But before I go into Dak's sound, I want to play this clip. It was Dak's first interception and the interaction between him and Mike McCarthy post interception. A couple of people asked me about that. So I'm going to play it and then see kind of like what y'all think about it. And we might talk about it if y'all have a lot to say.
But I like this guy pretty much. I had one of his Iowa State games when he was calling college football for ESPN. And as you know, the rest is becoming history. Dak trying to make something happen downfield, intercepted to Sean Gibson. Caught it like a punch, and he's got a ton of room here. Coming back down at the 30.
So watch the interaction between him and McCarthy after this, and then I'm going to go back and show the interception as an example of what I was talking about.
One of the problems you have is every once in a while, you end
So it's like
up
that
seeing
smirk right there.
29, Talanoa Hufanga coming at you, and it's not a good thing.
So let me let it go forward a second. I'll pause on the smirk, because it's the smirk that they were talking about, that they were saying was like a really bad sign of tension between him and McCarthy.
Number 29.
So the smirk itself didn't really bother me. When I saw the smirk, I was just kind of like, okay, maybe he's trying to brush it off. Maybe he's trying to laugh it off. Like, okay, it figures out of everything going wrong, I would get an interception right now. Huh. You know, but that combined with the fact that he's walking away from McCarthy and doesn't turn to look at him, it doesn't bode well, but it's not so bad that I feel like it's something that needs to be harped on. Martin said he would just fake blitz, then drop in covering the whole midfield. Yes. Fred, he was all over the place. It looked like there was more than one of him. Like I talked about there possibly being more than one of Mike McCarthy. But and sorry, with this view, it's hard for me to see numbers on everybody. So I'm just gonna like stop and start so y'all can kind of see what's happening. We'll go back here and then let it go back to when everybody's on the line of
these
scrimmage.
Quarterbacks later on in the draft. And he goes, oh, okay, I really don't know how to do that from a coaching perspective, but I like this guy pretty much. I had one of his Iowa State games when he was.
Okay, so you see how everybody's lined up right now. I think with the four linebackers on top, I think that's Fred Warner who's like on top. So watch what he does.
Calling college football for ESPN.
So like he got a head start, but he made sure he was in the right place once the ball was actually snapped, which is brilliant. but you've got two tight ends towards the bottom of your screen. One of them ends up not on anybody. He's just kind of like, okay, people didn't go where I thought they were going to go. Um, and then so the other side, I think that's Tyron Smith, who's the left tackle. He ends up just missing dude.
And as you know,
Like Regis Foreman then just completely missed him, and then Pollard can't really do
the
nothing.
rest is becoming history. Dak trying
And
to make
so yeah, it's just one situation where you can see that Dak's timing was off. I think in his sound he did say something about how the throw was off. Either him or McCarthy said something about how his feet were off for that throw, and it was just off target. And yeah, so that's just one example. But that's why when McCarthy is like, yeah, our preparation was good, yada yada yada, I'm just like, okay, well, if your preparation was good, even if you didn't go in with the perfect game plan, it seems like you would be able to adjust. So that just bugged me a little bit. But as far as that interaction between the two of them, I don't really have much to say about it. Um, Next up, I'm going to go to Dak sound real quick. There's only a couple of pieces of it that I want to play. And then we'll go to CDs real quick and then Micah.
That's a four-star telegram. There was so much put into this game, but measuring up, revenge, how demoralizing to have a performance like that?
Yeah, I guess that's a good word in a sense. Didn't see it coming, as you said. Put everything into this and got punched in the mouth. Called a couple of weeks ago, humbling against Arizona. But this may be the most humbling game I've ever been a part of. Felt good about the preparation. Felt good about everything, honestly, coming into this game, matchups, and they beat us in every aspect.
What was it like to be out to just whatever was called? Just you feel like you had chances to get stuff out there, or do you feel like you had opportunities to make plays and just didn't?
I mean, I've obviously got to look at it, but
So real quick, and then we'll skip ahead. The fact that he used the same word as Mike McCarthy kind of annoyed me because it just said to me that, once again, these statements aren't necessarily genuine. They sound very coached whenever they do stuff like that. Um, and I know that's a thing that happens, and I know it happened in the past, and I haven't had an issue with it in the past, but I'm just not in the mood to hear coach stuff. So once again, I can't tell them what to do. They're gonna do what they feel like they need to do as a team. But when it comes to, once again, fan response, public response, if people are wondering why they get the type of response that they do, despite the answers that they give, shit like this is why. I'm like, maybe they need two different media coaches to give them two different statements. But I don't want to hear both the quarterback and the head coach go into this with pretty much the same statements that really just don't sound like they encapsulate the severity of what we watched happen.
had the one drive, and other than that, yeah, I mean, didn't get anything going really. Is just the initial thought of what I can think of, whether it be the run game, action, whatever. We didn't get any momentum ever, other than that one drive, and it was only success of the night.
All right, I'm gonna skip a little ahead. He's asked about Micah's comments, which we didn't watch Micah sound yet, but Micah basically said something along the lines of, "They're not that far ahead of us as a team. We lost because of what we did to ourselves." That's like the long and short of what Micah had to say.
Micah said that he doesn't feel like you guys are too far off those lost self-inflicted errors. How much of that do you feel? How much of today do you feel was you guys, and then how much was the 49ers as well?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them credit. A team like that, powerful offense, discipline on defense, and then when you start out 2 3-and-out drives and a turnover on the first 3 possessions, and just give them opportunity after opportunities, it's always going to be tough. And I guess to speak on what Mike is saying is, yeah, there's a lot of self-inflicted things, but we can't do that in a game like this against a team like this. So that's part of being far off, and that's part of closing the gap and getting better.
So this was actually one part of Dak's sound that I did like, because when Micah said that we weren't far off from them as a team, he did say that because of self-inflicted wounds. He was like, no, the ways that we messed up, that was stuff that we did to ourselves. You know, those were self-inflicted wounds. And what Dak is basically saying is like, yeah, that stuff may have been self-inflicted, but part of being a good team means not doing shit like that, especially not against a team like this. So if we're out here doing that and they're not, that does make us far off from them. And I really like that Dak acknowledged that, because I think it's easy to take the Micah route and not really have to look in the mirror and acknowledge what you are and give yourself the excuse of like, oh, well, it's not like they're better than us. We beat ourselves. So I do respect Dak for having the wherewithal to be like, yeah, if we beat ourselves, then that means they're better than us. Because if they weren't better than us, they would have been beating themselves too. Um, so I did like that one particular part of his statement. And I think there was one more thing. Oh yeah, Dak talks a little bit. Actually, it's next. He talks a little bit about the identity of the team next.
Or Mike.
Mike, Dak, what is the identity of this offense right now? Where are you guys? How do you find where you need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we've established a rhythm, that's kind of been I don't want to say obvious, but something to lean on with our tempo, changing up the personnel, putting pressure on the other team. But it starts with getting one first down. As I said, when you go 3 and out in the first 2 drives and then a turnover, it's tough. It's tough to overcome. You feel like you're stepping on your own feet. But when we get a first down, as we did, I guess in the 4th possession, things got better. And you look at the rest of the game, it was either 3 and outs or the turnover spree that I started.
There was, a lot of people talked about last week. You get the win, confidence boosting, kick it. To lose like this, not demoralizing, but can it go the other way? I mean, can you say, well, if you don't measure up? I mean, how do you view that?
No, I mean, obviously we're not playing this team next week. If we want to get to where if we want to get to where we want to, we're going to have to play them again. But it's a new opponent next week. It's the NFL. It's tough. You got to move on fast, or it'll do exactly that. And landslide, I guess, if you're saying, and go the opposite way. So we damn sure didn't come in here and get the confidence that we're trying to grab leaving this game. But you've got to turn the page. You got to turn the page quick and put your best foot forward. Just coming back Wednesday at practice, or we'll be humbled again and on the back end of something like this come Monday.
So in response to that first question, he was asked about the identity of the team, and he basically said they couldn't find a rhythm, which to me says that he does not know what the identity of the team is. And I think a lot of people watching don't know. And so I'm not really mad at him. Well, I won't say I'm not mad at him for not knowing. I'm not mad at his response, because that question was asked to multiple members of the team, and nobody had a really good answer. But that's something else that I feel like should be a mark on Mike McCarthy's record. I'm like, we're in week 5, and the people on your offense can't say what the identity of the team is. That is really, really bad, especially coming off a loss like this, because it's like they don't even have anything to go back to, as in, we were supposed to be doing this, and here's where it went wrong. Instead, everybody's kind of like, I don't know what went wrong. I don't know what we should do different. They don't really have a center to go back to. It's going to be up to the coaches and staff to bring them somewhere. And I hope after this they do figure out an identity. But as of right now, they don't have one. And I think CeeDee Lamb sound, which we're going to listen to real quick. It's really short. But I think CeeDee Lamb sound is a really good example of that.
Go out there. We got to finish out. We got 12 other games to compete in. So, we got blew out tonight.
How did it get away from you guys tonight? In your opinion?
Wish I could tell you.
You said before the game that you were going to learn things about yourself as a team, whatever the outcome is. Is there anything that you learned about this offense?
About our offense, we got to be complete. We can't go out there one week and look like a super team, and then the following week shit the bed.
What's the identity of this offense?
I don't know.
Should you 5 weeks into the season?
I guess so. I don't know.
How do you guys find it?
I don't know.
So he was asked, what is the identity of the team? He said, I don't know. He said, should you know 5 weeks into the season? And he said, I guess so. And he's like, how do you guys find it? I don't know. Whoever that reporter is, I don't know if he'll ever be back, but I want to know who that guy was, because those are the kind of questions that I would ask. And that's exactly how I would ask him. Because, like, remember we were watching Mike McCarthy's presser, and like people asked questions and he gave an answer that was like, wait a minute. And nobody really followed up. But what we saw here with CD was I think we got a little bit of honesty from CD. And I would bet that there are other people in that locker room and other people on the team who, if they were able to answer those same questions just as honestly, they would answer them in very much the same way. And so real quick, before I go into the second part of what I want to talk about, I do want to talk about Micah's sound and some of the things that he said, especially since it did come up whenever we were talking about Dak and some of the things that Dak mentioned. Yeah, Martin, I agree. Those were great questions. And even though the answers were short and they were pretty much, I don't know, I feel like the answers were good, honest answers for anybody who's actually looking for like a genuine, honest beat on the team and where they are. I felt like those were good answers. And so now maybe I should have played this before Dak sound, but now we'll hear what they were talking about when they asked Dak about some of the things that Micah said.
Now that it's over, how do you feel about where you guys are at and what you need to do to compete at that level?
I don't think they really are higher level than us. I think we're the same caliber playoff team, if not the same talent standard as them. I just feel like we need to really reconsider some things, get together, and fix some things. I feel like it was a few plays away. The score don't really shape what really happened out there.
After a game like that, why do you feel that way? Why do you still feel like you guys are on their level?
I just feel like there was nothing that they did besides us beating ourselves. I mean, you look at
Listening to the voice, the guy who said after a game like that, why do you still feel like you're on their level? I feel like that's the same guy. So if anybody knows who that guy is, let me know. I like his questions.
the third downs. I mean, I jump off sides, and then they get 7, 5 plays later. Third down, Wanye makes a great hit on McCaffrey, but somehow it's a the drive goes on and they score right there. I mean, we get a 3rd and long, and it's like, it was just like, I feel like we just beat us. Like, I don't think, and that's the thing with like good teams like this. If you beat yourselves, it shows its magnitude. And today, we were the 4 turnover team. We was the team that couldn't get off the field on 3rd down and didn't succeed in those things. But I don't think that we're off the same caliber at all.
So even before I heard, thank you, Martin, for looking for that guy. Even though I heard Micah's sound before I heard Dak's, I did not like what Micah had to say, because I feel like if you're saying, oh, we beat ourselves, one, let's not get it twisted. The 49ers are a very good team. And even before this game happened, it was obvious that they were a very good team. And I think people before this game did think that the 49ers and Cowboys were closer in terms of, a scale of horrible to greatness than they actually turned out to be, judging from that game. But I think to say they're not at a higher level than us, we just beat ourselves, I think that does a discredit to what the 49ers put on the field. Because yes, there were some situations where they beat themselves. Like when J-Ron got that penalty for lining up in the neutral zone, I called it as soon as I saw it because it was an incomplete pass. That was one of their opportunities to get that team off the field. That would have been an incomplete pass. And I remember the pass wasn't completed. And before they even threw the flag, I was like, yeah, but J-Ron was lined up in the neutral zone. And then you hear the announcers like, hold on, it looks like there's a flag on the, like, yeah, I think anybody who saw that was like probably yelling at their screen, like, like, what are you doing? I don't understand how him being where he was, how he didn't realize he was in the neutral zone, but that's neither here nor there at this point. So it's like when you do things like that, yes, on some levels, I would say in certain instances during the game, you did beat yourself, because had that pass been incomplete without the penalty, maybe they get the team off the field and it's an extra opportunity for our offense to figure things out and gain some momentum. But I think when we see other situations, like the clip that I just showed you guys with Fred Warner going and blitzing and Tyron Smith just absolutely missing, things like that, you can't say that that's the Cowboys beating themselves. That right there especially was an example of Cowboys being beat in multiple ways on the same snap. So I feel like we can't have the Cowboys saying things like, "Oh, we're on the same level as them," until they prove it. If it was just so many penalties in the wrong situations that led to them getting so many first downs that they beat the Cowboys that way, okay, fine. But there's no way you can look at like what actually happened on the field, how well Brock Purdy played, how well their defense played, and say like, "Oh, we just beat ourselves." No, Micah, I love you to death, but the Cowboys got beat yesterday. And I think the sooner that you admit that, the better it is for everybody. I'm trying to see if there was anything else that I wanted to play from Micah. He acknowledged that it's still early in the season, all good. And then I think for most of the sound, he just kept reiterating that his belief that the Cowboys beat themselves. Um, so yeah, overall, I wanted to listen to some of the sound from the 49ers, especially because there was one bit of sound that came out that I felt like was a response to something that MicahParsons said. And I just kind of heard it in passing. I didn't have time to actually look it up. But someone on the 49ers said something along the lines of like, "Oh, I think us pulling our linemen when we did is proof that we're not on the same level." And that was technically a little bit polite of that person because there was a lot of proof last night that the teams weren't on the same level, and that was just one instance. So yeah, overall, what they put on the field was not great. But what I'm hearing from Mike McCarthy so far does not inspire confidence whatsoever. I heard someone last night say, okay, they're probably going to start asking for Schottenheimer to start calling plays. And at this point, I'm not against it because whatever Mike McCarthy is doing is not working. Um, Even during the wins, the offense hasn't looked particularly explosive or particularly, good, to use a simple word. And this is the second time after a loss that Mike McCarthy has said, "Oh, that's on me. I messed up, yada yada yada." And I'm just like, what happened to Dak having the ability to take the reins? Is that no longer a thing? Can Schottenheimer not step in at certain points during the game? Is that not a thing? What exactly is happening? And those are the answers that we haven't gotten. So for the people calling for someone else to do the play calling, I can't really be mad at those people right now because everything that we're hearing from the locker room points to the idea that that should 100% be the case. Um, and then whenever it comes to Dak, like I said, I want to watch more of the film. Dak definitely deserves a lot of the blame, but I'm not going to sit here and act like he deserves all of it. From what I did see and from what I do remember, there's plenty of blame to go around. When we think about the things that we were looking at before this game, that gave everybody the impression that the Cowboys would be a competitive team against the 49ers. A lot of those things turned out to either just not be the case or they turned out to just not be the case the way that a lot of people thought they would. So, for example, I remember going into this game, everybody was talking about vision defenses. There were several press conferences where Mike McCarthy was asked specifically about vision defense. I think even Shoddy was asked about vision defense. And vision defense is basically a different form of zone, But what we saw last night was a lot of man on man. There was a lot of it, and they were effective. If you follow me on Twitter, one of the things that I posted was like NBC basically posted to Twitter a highlight reel of CD not being able to get open because of their man coverage. And so that's another one of those times where I listened to Mike McCarthy say, like, yeah, our preparation was good. And I was like, was it? Because you weren't prepared to deal with this at all. Even if we thought they would mostly use vision defense, there's no way that you thought with this, with this room of receivers that you keep boasting about that would never see man at all. And there was just no adjustment for it. There was no answer for it. At no point during the evening did we see the receivers get schemed open enough to give the team some momentum. So explain that. Like, where are your answers for that? And then on the defensive side, it's just there were too many instances where there was just like so much padding for the intended target. And I'm just like, how are these dudes ending up so open? Was it their first touchdown, I think, where dude just ran in the back of the end zone from one side of it to another, and it was just like the reaction time on the defensive players in realizing what was happening and adjusting to get to him. Like, it was obviously too late. And then I think one of their last touchdowns, a similar thing happened. And I don't remember who it was who caught that pass, but he basically, the person who caught that pass basically ran past two of our defenders. And they didn't even turn around to stop him. He just ran back there. And then Brock Purdy just threw him the ball. And I was just like, neither one of y'all was going to follow him. Like, what the hell? Um, Martin says they prepared for zone defense. It's on the coaches. Martin, I get that, but could they not have made some adjustments at some point to at least even try? Because at a certain point, you get so down in the game, you're looking so bad anyway. It's like you might as well try some shit. What harm could it do? Are things gonna actually get worse than how they look right now? That's my thing. Even when they started to get some momentum, right? When they started to really get momentum, it was when Cooks and Turpin and Rico Dowdle got in the game. And I'm like, why did it take so long? Why did we not start off with such an aggressive approach to the offense? You know, it seemed to do a lot of good. Tony Pollard had a rough go of it the first three sequences. Like the first one, he got 1 yard rushing. The second drive, he got -1. And then the third one, he finally found some open space, and then it resulted in a turnover. And yes, that dude was very effective at punching the ball out. But I just feel like, especially considering what Mike McCarthy said about the run pass, he's like, I didn't like the ratio of run passing. And I'm like, dude, you're the one calling the plays. What the fuck are you talking about? You didn't like the ratio. Do something different. And then it's like when they finally got momentum and you saw we had all these weapons that we weren't using, it's just like, yo, why did it take you so long to get here? Why didn't we start off with this? Why did we even defer? Like, I feel like everybody was on the same page about the fact that, yo, the Cowboys play better with a lead. So why not give them the chance to develop a lead? Like, we won the coin toss and then deferred. When was the last time that even worked out for the Cowboys? I'm just like, make it make sense, y'all. Pro Fan Talk said, to Martin's point, that is on coaching, not the players. They play how they prepared. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm actually agreeing with y'all 100% on that. I agree that that is on the coaches. But what I'm saying is the coaches should have adjusted at some point. They should have had something in their back pocket to know that at some point they might see it, and if it worked, they might keep doing it. So I just would have thought that they would have had something in mind for how to deal with man coverage. Sometimes it seemed like they never dealt with it well at all. But once again, I haven't watched the film. I haven't watched all 22, so don't crucify me. I could be wrong, but that's just what I'm seeing. That's what I was feeling. And Martin followed up and said, San Francisco run route concepts to purposely open one guy, honestly, like our offense, but didn't run none of it. Yeah. And I was talking with someone last night, and they said that it kind of felt like KellenMoore calling plays last night. And I had to agree. Not in the sense that it would have been the exact same plays called, but with that whole feeling of the offense can't seem to get any momentum. It seems like our skill players aren't being used to the best of their abilities. It seems like they're not being used in ways that are smart based on what we know them to be able to do. When it comes to receivers not being schemed open, those things felt very familiar. When it came to just like a general lack of aggressiveness, just a general lack of, we're going to find a way to fuck you up still. That just wasn't there. And yeah, I want to see more of that, because even when we did start to get momentum, it felt like the momentum was trying to come from a certain level of finesse and executing plays a certain way. And I'm like, at some point, especially against teams like the 49ers, and this will also be an issue against the Eagles, at some point, the attitude of the offense especially just needs to be like, I'm gonna fuck you up, And it just felt like, it almost felt like every little mistake got to them. And what that says to me, and this is me kind of putting my coaching hat on and me going back to some of the things that I saw with my own team and people that I've trained and people that I've coached in the past. But when I start to see that, it starts to kind of feel like they're relying on like intellect and reading the defense and executing the plays properly to win this game. They're not relying enough on just their competitiveness and their aggression, which is what a lot of these games like really need in order to flip a loss, a potential loss, a potential win. Martin says we were trying to play catch up on the first drive. Yes, facts. And you know what, Martin? The game was 7-0 for a while. Um, but I really just think the defense was out there so much that they gave up too many looks. They started to get tired. And if I'm being honest, I think some of them mentally started to check out. So, but anyway, that being said, like I said, I'm here for the fans. I'm here for fans like me. So even though there's nothing I can really do to help make the team better, sometimes I do try to like send a message. As a matter of fact, this is something that I used to do when my podcast first started. I was very much about individual players, not so much teams. Um, and if there was like a favorite player that I had, I would write them a letter and I would read the open letter on my podcast. And so it would be like when the podcast first started, it was like Devin Booker a lot. It was like, dear Book, dear Devin Booker, yada yada yada. Or dear CeeDee Lamb got a lot of letters. Like I used to love CeeDee Lamb way more than I love Dak, and that kind of changed over time. Reggie said, I'm tired of having offenses that seem to allow the defenses to dictate what we do. When will it change? Reggie, what you just said is what I'm talking about. That's what I was trying to describe when I was talking about that feeling like they just didn't have the aggressiveness. Like, yes, I want to see that. I want to see the Cowboys offense go out and they set the tone and they decide what's going to happen, as opposed to it feeling like they're responding to what the defense is doing all the time. At some point, Dak needs to be able to just go out there and be like, I'm running this offense. We have the ball. We're going to say what happens to it. We decide how many plays we get. We decide how many snaps we get. We decide how this drive goes. And if you want to change that, you are going to have to work really fucking hard to do anything about it. That's what I need to see. And it's just not what I'm seeing. But going back to what I was saying about writing the letters, like, yeah, I would write these letters and it would be like, yeah, dear CD, yada yada yada. And it would be about something that I wanted to see in the upcoming game or something like that. And so if I were to write a letter today, it would be an open letter to the entire Cowboys team. And by team, I mean everybody, coaches, coordinators, staff, players, water boys, whoever whoever is in a position to have any type of influence on the mindset of the team and what they're doing in the locker room is who I'd be talking to. Um, so I posted this thing on Twitter, and it's from my mindset coach. And if you've been watching me for a while, you've seen him on the show before. But he's a former NFL player too, and he has a podcast. And this morning I went to listen to his podcast because I hadn't listened to the latest episode, and what he said just felt very fitting for this moment. So I'm gonna share a little bit of what he had to say. As part of my open letter. And then I'll tell you some of the other things that I want to say in this letter.
And were there reasons for why I could? Of course there are reasons. There's always reasons. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason for you fucking up. But you have to discipline yourself. You have to pay a price and work to be better. That's all we can do. Will you ever be perfect? Sure, for a week, for 2 weeks. But you won't win. You won't be perfect all the time. That's not the goal, remember? Did Kobe win a championship every fucking year? Did he score 50 every game? Did he win every game? No, but the goal is to prepare to win every game, to prepare to win any game against anybody, against any team at any time, under any circumstance. Did he have to play during some fucked up circumstances? Yes. You remember Isaiah Thomas? The second one, not the first one. When his sister passed away, man. His sister died. And he came out there and fucking balled out. How many people can do that? Exactly. Because they're not prepared to do that. They don't train to do that. You see what I'm saying? Did he expect for his sister to die? Was he out there sitting there anticipating, yeah, my sister's going to die anytime now? No, it was unexpected. Life gave him a challenge, and he rose to that challenge. And guess what? He's got more challenges. They don't stop. Do they stop for you? Because they don't stop for me. So I imagine they don't stop for you either.
So yeah, that was the clip that I shared this morning, and especially the first thing that he said when he said, "There's always a reason for you fucking up, but you have to discipline yourself. You have to pay a price and work to be better. That's all we can do." And that's kind of where I'm at this point, especially with the offense and especially with Dak, because it's like there's always a reason. And in the past, there have been a lot of reasons. There have been O-line issues. I still contend that KellenMoore was not a good fit as far as offensive coordinator for this team. Just now, I'm wondering whether Mike McCarthy actually is. Um, there were times where he didn't have enough weapons. There were times that I'm sure the injuries that he was coming back from or injuries that he was dealing with played a role in what was happening. That's the thing, especially in the world of football. There's always a reason. There's always going to be something that you can point to say, this is why I fucked up. But you have to discipline yourself. Keyword, discipline yourself. You have to pay a price and work to be better, is what my mindset coach was saying in that clip. And it's called the Sports Motivation Podcast, if anybody wants to look that up. But I think at this point, it's just, especially as a person who listens so intently to everything that Dak Prescott and the other players have to say, and I write about it, and it's what I base a lot of my opinions on. It's what I base a lot of my predictions on. It's what I use to justify my belief in the idea that this offense would look a lot better this year. Like, yeah, at this point, I am at a place where I'm just like, yeah, okay, there's always a reason. What are we actually going to do about it? What are the Cowboys going to do differently in order to regain the trust and support of a lot of people who just don't have it in them to keep trusting and supporting this team? If you give a fuck. Sometimes the way they talk, I wonder if they give a fuck. Like, maybe they would prefer if I and others started covering another team, if they like weren't as popular. I don't know. But that's all that we can control. Like, they got to play the next 12 games of the season anyway, whether we follow them or not. So their job technically does not change. But when it comes to our role in this whole sports ecosystem, it's like, yeah, if you actually give a fuck about support from fans and how fans feel, if that affects you at all, if it means anything to you at all, I think what everybody needs to see is like, okay, what happens next? We need to see evidence of that discipline. We need to see evidence of them doing something differently. And so, on that note, I wanted to share a part of this letter with you guys just because I felt like this was like a good time to talk about failure in general. My mindset coach actually has another or an older episode that I should say, and it was actually the episode that influenced me to hire him as my mindset coach. And it's an episode that's called "How to Be a Champion in Times of Crisis." Um, and I would call this somewhat of a crisis for the Dallas Cowboys. And hold on, I forgot to look this up, but in Japanese, I'm looking it up right now. There's a Japanese symbol for crisis, and it's a combination of two words that I'm looking up so I can make sure and give you accurate information. Yeah, so it's a combination of two characters. The first character means dangerous, and the second character means opportunity. And so that is a Japanese word for crisis. And that's something that I always thought was pretty cool, because when you think about what a crisis is, it's like you're basically at a place where something has happened, something significant has happened. And on one side, there's risk or danger. And on the other side, there's opportunity or something that you gain. So when MicahParsons talks about how you can either win or learn, there is no loss, that's what I think of, because that learning is what you have that you can gain in that moment of crisis. And so I consider this a moment of crisis because not only was it a loss, which you don't want on your record at all, but it was a loss that says this team isn't what fans thought it was. This team looks like they're not who they thought they were. And it looks like they're not on the right track to accomplish what they said they were going to and wanted to accomplish this season. So I would call that a crisis. They're having a crisis of offensive proportions, of defensive proportions. They should be considering this an identity crisis for the team. There's a crisis on all levels. Even if you look at how upset CeeDee Lamb is, and people are criticizing him, and I personally don't like the pacing and the whining and a lot of that, but it's a contract year for him. And even he has to think to himself, like, okay, if I want the leverage that I need to have to get the contract I feel like I deserve, I need for these games to go a certain way, especially for me specifically. So it's not just one game or one season that's on the line. We're talking about the next several years of his career that are being affected week by week, game by game, and drive by drive. Yes, he's pissed and it's showing, you know. So I don't like the way it shows, but I can't sit here and act like he doesn't have good reason to be pissed. Um, but yeah, so this being a crisis, on one side, there's a danger that the team just ends up demotivated, that they end up not looking at themselves the same, and that they don't respond accordingly because they don't look at themselves the same. But on the other side is opportunity. They could learn a lot from this. Like I said earlier, it's not outside the realm of possibility. You know, maybe outside the realm of probability at this point, but it's not outside the realm of possibility for them to turn it around, win out the season, or at least win enough games to still make the playoffs and ultimately find themselves in an NFC championship game, which would change the way a lot of people feel about the team. So it just depends on what they do in this moment of crisis and whether or not it leans towards danger of falling off even more, or the opportunity of them getting a fire lit under them and figuring out what they need to do differently in order to go into the next several weeks with the type of preparation that they thought they had for week 5. So in this other episode, which is called How to Be a Champion in Times of Crisis, my mindset coach basically talked about some of the things that athletes deal with whenever it comes to crisis. And if you know me well, you probably know this you've probably heard me say this next statement that you're about to hear from him. So just listen to this real quick.
They should handle it. All right. And the reality is that we
Oh, sorry. I always listen to things at higher speed. I listen to things sped up. Here we go.
don't always handle it in the best way either. So at the end of the day, I was asking myself, is like, yo, what does my vision require of me right now? How do I need to be during this time of crisis? How do I need to remain a champion? How do I need to maintain that killer instinct during this time where most people shrink and run from the challenges, the adversity, etc.? I want.
So the first thing he said is, what does my vision require of me right now? Like I said, if you're a good friend of mine, you've heard me ask that question to myself out loud. What does my vision require of me right now? Now, my mindset coach, his name is Nee Shovo. So Nee, sometimes whenever we're having conversations, like our group sessions, for example, he'll challenge people to say, like, not, you don't want to just outline your goals. You also want to outline the circumstances for your goals. So not only, okay, I want to accomplish this, but I want to accomplish this while doing this and or without doing that, right? So for example, we just talked about CeeDee Lamb a second ago. So CeeDee Lamb might have to say to himself, like, okay, how do I make sure that I get what I need statistically in order to have the leverage that I want to have going into these contract negotiations? But how do I do it while still making sure that I play the role that I'm needed to play on this team and without distracting the team, without being a detriment to the team, you know? But overall, that initial question of what does my vision require of me right now, those are the questions that's the question that Mike McCarthy has to ask and that Dak Prescott has to ask and everybody has to ask, because it might require something different from everybody. For some people, they might need to literally get better at their position. Some people might need to do more film watching. Some people might need to work on their game day routine so that they don't get distracted or get too arrogant before a game and make sure that they're actually executing properly. Some people might need to get better at asking the right questions. Maybe they aren't going into these games armed with the knowledge that they need to have because they haven't even clued their coaches into the fact that they don't have everything that they need. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there. But that question of like, what does your vision require? I feel like that's something that we can all ask ourselves when it comes to situations like this that are very disappointing, maybe embarrassing to the point of being hurtful. It's like, yo, you cannot just sit down and let this whole situation beat you up and make you feel defeated when you got 90 days, 12 weeks left to go. Okay, figure out how to make the most of it. Figure out what your vision requires of you next and go ahead and accomplish that. And then there's one more part of the same podcast where my mindset coach really makes a couple of good points that I'm going to go into. And what he says is part of the reason why after today, I probably won't harp on this game very much at all.
All right. Now, that's probably not what you expected to hear right off top, right? But I will say this: shame and guilt are two of the most debilitating, paralyzing and destructive emotions that you can have. And they got to be handled correctly. Now, let me clarify. I don't believe there's such thing as a quote unquote negative or bad emotion. There are emotions that help us or the emotions that hurt us. And if we're smart, we can take the emotions of pain, right? And we can channel them. That's the whole idea of being mentally tough. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel negative emotions or you're not going to feel fear. It's your ability to convert those into positive actions.
So what he just said was in a section of that podcast episode where he talks about forgiving yourself and others quickly, which is definitely the first thing everybody on that team is going to have to do. So Cowboys, if there's anybody that's being blamed, especially in this game, there's so much to blame to go around. You've got to forgive yourself and others quickly, because it's like I always say, it's for athletes. And this is actually related to Colorado too. I probably should have said this in the very beginning, but when I was thinking about all the disappointment from this past weekend, I was thinking not only about the Cowboys and their loss, but if you watched my recap yesterday, I was really disappointed in how the Colorado Buffaloes played, even though they won. Coach Prime was also very disappointed. And I think in both cases, you've got teams who have to forgive themselves and others for the sake of moving forward. Because whether you want to admit it or not, the things that we think, the things that we believe, the things that we feel determine our actions. Even if you are going out on the field and doing the right things based on how the plays are drawn up, based on the technique that you were taught, the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you feel about the situation that you're in can absolutely impact how aggressive you are about what you do, the focus that you have in doing what you do. So when we're talking about the Colorado Buffaloes, especially, they're a young team, not only in age, but also in the amount of time that roster has been put together. So especially for them, those emotions are definitely going to come into play. And then with the Cowboys, like, yes, these guys are older, but in the grand scheme of things, not that much older. And so in both cases, with both teams, those guys are going to have to forgive themselves and each other in order to approach these next steps with the right mindset. Because Sunday is already over. Saturday is already over. Colorado faces Stanford on Friday night, and the Cowboys have the Chargers on Monday. They don't have time to sit around and point fingers and place blame. They need to be watching film and figuring out what they need to do differently in order to get different results in literally a few days. Both teams pretty much have less than a week at this point. You know what I'm saying? So forgive yourself, forgive your quarterback, forgive your coach, whatever. Now, I'm not saying forget, because like I said earlier, it might be time for somebody else to call plays, but unless that change gets made today, you're going to have to forgive Mike McCarthy and figure out what to do next. Even if it means, like, let's say hypothetically, I don't know anything about what's going on in that locker room, but like, let's say hypothetically, Dak Prescott is like, yo, I need to be calling more of the plays. Or one of the things I even noticed was on the sideline, Schottenheimer was the one talking to Dak Prescott most of the time. So let's say they get together and Dak Prescott and Schottenheimer say, yo, Mike McCarthy, we feel like we need to be calling the plays. Like if Dak says, me and Shotty want to call the plays against the Charger, let us handle it. Even for them to handle that conversation properly so that it leads to a productive results means they have to first forgive Mike McCarthy for what he already did, you know? And then moving on to what my mindset coach Nee said about shame and guilt. Shame and guilt are very debilitating emotions. So that's when it comes to forgiving yourself. Because if you are dealing with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, you can't believe in yourself while looking at what's going on around you and thinking about what happened in the past. Like you can't develop that self-belief in what you need to do in the future if you're stuck in shit that you already did. Because you got to do something different. So how can you focus on doing something different if you're thinking about what you already did? Like, no, you got to put that behind you. You have to somehow align your identity with the version of yourself that can do better, with the version of yourself that can perform better, that can execute better, that can be a better leader, that can be a better team motivator. That's the version of yourself that you need to be thinking about. If you're struggling with shame and guilt, you can't align yourself with that identity. So let it go. It sucks. It's probably the worst loss that Dak Prescott has suffered in terms of like emotional impact since he's been a Cowboy. It sucks, but you got to let it go. We need you to envision yourself as the leader and team motivator that you're supposed to be right now. And then what what Nee goes on to say in the podcast, and I won't go through the trouble of playing this part, but he talks about pain and pleasure and how they're the two biggest motivators for humans. But one of the most interesting things, and this is scientifically proven, so like this is free game for y'all. If you've ever wondered why you struggle with making certain decisions or doing what you quote unquote need to do, here's the interesting thing about pain and pleasure and the human mind. We are motivated essentially by pain and pleasure. Those two things, right? That's everything that we do can be boiled down to that. What's interesting about human beings is that we'll always do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. So that's why you see some people, or at least I see this a lot as a trainer, well, people will set a goal and they'll be like, this is the body type I want, right? And then at some point, they'll fall off the goal. And what I recognize is when they fall off, like they'll be making progress. It's not like they aren't making progress, but they'll be making progress, and at some point they'll fall off. And that's when I learn what is their pain versus pleasure balance, right? Because usually that point at which they fall off is the point at which it gets hard, and what it takes for them to reach the next level of their goals is not pleasurable enough for them to do it, you know? So they'll avoid that pain. They'll avoid that pain of honing in on their diet even more, of doing even more intense workouts, of being even more particular about the time that they go to bed and what they eat and how much they eat of it, right? They'll avoid that pain because they're already experiencing the pleasure of their body looks better than it did a couple months ago anyway. So they're like, I'm good. I'm getting compliments. I went to my high school reunion. Everybody told me how good I look. I don't actually need to go through all this pain because I've got the pleasure that I was looking for. And then they fall off and then they gain a bunch of weight. And I hear from them 9 months later and they're like, what happened? I'm like, well, you didn't finish the process as a whole thing. And I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, it bugs me. But anyway, yes, human beings will do way more to avoid pain than they ever will to gain pleasure. So I think in addition to forgiving themselves, in addition to imagining what their vision requires of them, and in addition to just getting rid of the shame and guilt that they might be feeling right now, what they need to do is when we as human beings go through situations of loss, disappointment, embarrassment, whatever, our brain is looking for associations. Our brain is like, what can we associate with this pain so that we can avoid this in the future? And so I think the first thing that they need to do is associate this feeling with whatever they were doing in the past. Wherever they fell off when it came to preparation, whatever assumptions they made about the opposition that turned out to not be true, whatever led to them not having adjustments, whatever led to them feeling uncomfortable and off balance during the game, that's what they need to associate with the pain that they're feeling. That's what they need to be like, all right, everything that I'm feeling, I'm gonna write it down. Boom, 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 boom. This is what led to this. I need to never do this shit again, because that is one of the things that can help ensure that they avoid it in the future. And then hopefully that will lead to more pleasure that they can lean on with new actions and saying, okay, we took these actions, we changed the way we approach the game, we changed our game day routine, we changed the way that we play on the field, and it led to this. So pain to be avoided and pleasure that they can pursue. So hopefully someone sends that open letter to the Cowboys, and hopefully y'all got something out of it. Hopefully that was educational for you guys. I am a motivational speaker on the side. That's one of the things I like to do. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that. I'm gonna read through a couple more comments and then I'm gonna get out of here because I got places to see and people to do or something like that. Um, let's see. Oh, I already read that one. Pro Fan Talk said, Reggie T, if it was only that simple, the other guys get paid too. It's a chess match, and San Francisco had more queens on the board. Facts. Fred Warner is a queen, and I mean that in a chess sense. Like, he literally moves around on the field at will without opposition anywhere he wants to go. There's no rules for how he does that. Reggie T said, good teams with identities seem to have it figured out at Pro Fan Talk. Reggie T, I don't know if you were here when we were listening to the CeeDee Lamb sound and the Dak sound, but essentially our offense at least has no identity. And according to CeeDee Lamb, they don't know how to find it. Whew, ooh, boy, it's going to be a fun 12 weeks. It seems like Cowboys fans drink the Kool-Aid a little too much, one game at a time. Yeah, whatever. If CD did what Stephon Diggs did to Josh Allen, it would be worse. There's two sides of the coin what he did last night. I don't know, man, because like not only was he pacing and stuff, but there was also, and maybe I pick up on stuff like this because, like I've said before, I studied human and organizational development, so there's certain things that I notice that like have weight in my mind that I'm just like, that other people might not notice. But when I saw him and MicahParsons basically gossiping off to the side, my first thought was like, they're on two different sides of the ball. What do they have to talk about, and why is CD being so animated? So. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Like I said, he's justified in how he feels. I don't know how to feel about the actions. Um, Carlton Miller said, overall, the 49ers is the better team. That was proven. Too many fingers being pointed at the coaches. I don't know if I would say too many. I don't know if I would say too many just because of what we saw and what we heard in post game. I feel like there's definitely a lot of fingers that need to be pointed at the coaches. The Cowboys defense isn't used to being hit in the mouth. Fact, Kittle blocked 11 one-on-one. At times he did, yes. CMC wasn't even a factor. No, he wasn't. Fred Warner definitely was. It's easy to blame McCarthy, but Dak is not that guy. The receivers had one-on-one matchups and couldn't win them. Well, we talked about that, Carlton. And I don't think it's. I guess it depends on what you mean by easy to blame McCarthy. So I don't know what part you joined in on, but the main reason that I was blaming McCarthy was one because I haven't watched the film. So I did admit that there should be blame placed on Dak. I just don't know how much blame to put on him. But yeah, there should absolutely be blame placed on Dak. So depending on what you heard me say, maybe you just didn't hear the part where I talked about that. Um, but when it comes to like his role in calling plays, for example, that was kind of one of the things that I was talking about, where I don't know how much blame to put on him in that aspect because we were told that he had the ability to do that. But then it was Mike McCarthy who went in the press conference and said, well, the play calling, I didn't like it and it was my fault. And that was kind of weird. So I know I spoke on that a lot in the latter part of what I was saying, but that's why, because Mike McCarthy took 100% responsibility. And I'm just like, okay, you said that Dak would be able to call plays, but now you're saying it's all on you. Make it make sense. But in the sense of decisions to be made, especially when it comes to like when to let a pass off versus throwing it out of bounds, yeah, all of that is 100% up to Dak. Now there were circumstances going on around him, but even those are situations where I just feel like there should be some level of preparation that goes into what do I do when I feel this type of pressure? What do I do when I see this type of formation? Um, but that stuff I need a little bit information on. I can acknowledge that those are areas where Dak should definitely be blamed, but in order for me to go into detail about it, I need to know more. Like it's easy for me to say that even when people were like, okay, he should use his feet more. The couple of times that I saw that he could have potentially used his feet in the sense that nobody was open and there was a little bit of space, there was also nobody to block for him. There was also people coming towards him. And so I don't know if he was thinking, okay, I need to get a first down. And if I can't, I'm going to just take the sack. Or if he was thinking, okay, there's too many people who's going to be hitting me at one time. I'd rather get hit by one person instead of three. Or if he really was just looking that hard for a target and just did not let the ball off in time and got sacked. I don't know. So I will admit, yes, he needs to receive some of the blame, but that's all I can say. I can't really say like how much blame he should get or go into detail about it until I watch a little bit more of this because even though my audience isn't huge, I do try to be responsible in what I say. And I don't want to go out saying a bunch of bullshit based off of memory when I was upset and playing on my phone half the time, when I know I can wait a couple of days, watch the all 22, and actually come back with some accurate information. But yes, I agree. And I said a few times, there's blame to go around for everybody in that locker room right now. There's not a single person who should be without blame, without fault, or without some fingers pointed at them. It's just that whenever it comes to what we've heard and what we've seen so far, Mike McCarthy is the one that we can for sure say, okay, you deserve blame here, here, and here. Especially with like what Martin's saying right here. We're in week 5 with no identity. That is Mike McCarthy's job. That is part of his job description to ensure that the team has no identity. So yes, I can harp on that all day because we heard a couple of people admit to them not having an identity, and Mike McCarthy doesn't seem to have any plans in place to establishing that identity. Also, this not knowing how to get one is bad. You know, when you have your wide receiver one stand in front of a camera and say, I don't know what our identity is. Maybe we should have one by week 5. I don't know how to get one. That is fucking terrible. I don't care. So yeah, Dak deserves blame, and he'll get the blame that is due to him when I have time to watch the film. But today, I can speak on Mike McCarthy more than I can speak on Dak. Brian Bradford said, Dan Quinn too. Yes, the lack of discipline on the defense is something that even if you didn't see it coming, should have been nipped in the bud. Earlier in the year, Mike McCarthy said something along the lines of coordinators, one of the biggest mistakes of coordinators is that they don't have a good enough handle on their assistants. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, even if you're Dan Quinn and you don't want to come down from out the booth, you should have a good enough relationship with your assistants to where somebody should be able to do whatever needs to be done to get those dudes in check and to get them to respond a little bit better to what they're seeing and not have so many pre-snap penalties. That shit was ridiculous. And Carlton said, I agree with the video in respect to that gentleman. Players have to take ownership. They have played the 49ers multiple times in the last 2 years. What more can a coach prepare you for? I think when it comes to identity, that's something that a coach can prepare you for. And I think when it comes to adjustments, that's something that a coach can prepare you for. But it seems just like when it comes to this game, the guys were unprepared. They were unprepared with what they did see. They were unprepared to make adjustments. It sounds like they don't have an identity. All of these things are problems. And that is why I wrote my letter. So I'm not going to keep y'all for too much longer. I really appreciate y'all for joining in. I love those of you who come in and make comments. Brian, Carlton, Martin. I really do appreciate you guys. Pro Fan Talk, you've been here for the last couple of episodes, and the people I saw for the first time today. Well, Mills, I haven't seen you in a while, so thanks for showing up. Rackham, and a few people who showed up for the first time today, thank you so much. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share this video if you liked it. This was a way better episode than yesterday, despite the fact that my laptop still tried to mess up everything. I'll just put it that way. So thanks for showing up and giving me somebody to talk to when I do these lives. The next time I go live will probably be on Friday afternoon. So I hope to see y'all here. Subscribe, turn on the notifications, and I'll see y'all then. So until Friday, catch me on Twitter. I'll be back. I'm not very active today because I can only deal with so much, but I'll be back. So make sure you follow me so you can interact with me there. And enjoy your Monday. It's Indigenous Peoples Day. So enjoy Indigenous Peoples Day. And on that note, I'm Bitch 2, and I'm out.